Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Only on Trio.
TV visits 99% of American living rooms, but it's often a rude guest.
And because it is a guest, it shouldn't do anything to offend the host, spoil the children, or upset the horses.
Shit happens.
Producers and writers push the medium to probe and provoke.
Unless you upset somebody, you really haven't succeeded.
The best shows are the ones where people throw something at the screen at 10:56.
My God, what mail we got.
Networks, on the other hand, urge moderation and compliance.
They want to make things safe.
And let's keep people almost sedated, if you will, with just mediocre television.
When the two opposing forces collide, the ensuing power struggle often results in censorship. Censorship of language.
Coming out of Sipowicz's mouth, it sounds filthy and we can't have it.
Of race.
A white woman had touched a black man's arm. The sponsor had said, no way.
Of violence.
Hey, nothing would please me more than to show a bunch of decapitations. However, it ain't gonna happen.
Of politics.
They didn't understand.
Controversial, have everybody agree.
And of sex.
They said to me, nipple's too big. Can you get a woman with a smaller nipple?
In a country built on the cornerstone of free expression, censorship cloaks itself in other terms. Censorship is networks defending the status quo.
Network people are always in fear of being fired. That's basically what motivates a network executive, the fear of being fired.
Network presidents don't really have a long shelf life historically, so I'm sure the pressure must be, you know, uber intense.
Censorship is watchdog groups legislating morality.
Why should somebody else's view prevail over my view?
To me, a watchdog group is usually like just some guy who has a fax machine and a TV who just sits there all day waiting to be offended.
Censorship is sponsors flexing their wallets.
An advertiser doesn't mind going out on a limb if they feel that there's a constituency for the limb.
Television is what happens between the commercials. Television exists for the commercials.
Censorship is even producers limiting themselves.
A lot of censorship is just self-imposed.
You were always thinking, is this going to offend? Is that going to offend?
What does it take to get it right the first time?
Now, television's hottest shows and most daring producers face down stifling standards and prudish practices. On TV's most censored moments. Coming up, breaking the ball barrier.
So the first time in the history of television, the word testicle was said.
Then, when breaking news breaks taboos.
And before we knew it, in a matter of seconds, he blew his brains out on the air.
And later, out of control with birth control.
It appeared to depict a young lady who was somewhat intensely interested in getting at that pill.
When we return with TV's most censored moments.
You're watching Trio. Every night in June, Trio brings you uncensored comedy.
If I believe the Jews killed God, I'd worship the Jews.
A month exploring what's offensive, what's funny, and what's both.
The humor is almost defined by the limits of what you can do or can't do on TV.
World premiere stand-up performances, exclusive movies, TV series, and Trio originals. 30 days of comedy that completely changed the rules.
Let's all look kid a fact.
Uncensored comedy, every night at 9 Eastern, only in June, only on Trio. Pop Culture TV.
I heard about Vonage on the radio. The one flat rate that allows me to call all over the country really appealed to me. When I ordered it, I got a Vonage adapter, a router, and I just connected it to my cable modem. It was really easy.
The call clarity is very good, very clear. And when I first got Vonage, I called my mother and asked her if she could tell that I was on a different type of phone, but she couldn't.
I did a lot of research before I found the right service. I saw the article in the new product section of Popular Mechanics. They gave it an excellent review. I got Vonage, and I'm very satisfied.
Since we've had Vonage, our regular service went down for 2 days, but Vonage didn't. As for my customer service, I mean, it's been the best I've ever had.
When you're averaging $150 to $300 a month on phone bills, you can see why a plan for $40 is really appealing. We're saving at least $2,000 this year.
Call 1-VONAGE-HELP now. Get unlimited calling to all 50 states plus Canada for only $39.99 per month. Vonage, the broadband phone company. DSL or cable modem required.
You're watching Trio.
Attention inventors. Have a great idea or invention? Then you need Inventec, the launchpad for new ideas. Inventec understands the needs of inventors like you. And only Inventec offers a free patent classification search. It's the first step you need to take to success. Call 1-800-927-6565. Act now, and with your search report, receive a free video and all the materials necessary to get you on your way. Be the first of the marketplace while your idea is still hot. Using state-of-the-art technology and our worldwide experience, Inventec can turn your idea into reality. Don't let this opportunity slip away. Call Inventec now and receive your free patent classification search and bonus video. Take that all-important first step toward turning your dream into reality. Call 1-800-927-6565 to receive your free patent classification search from Inventec, the launchpad for your new ideas. Call now.
You're watching Trio.
In a country founded on the principle of free speech, censors often have a hard time justifying their own existence.
It's the worst job in America. It's utterly and completely thankless. Everybody just yells at you.
And that's the secret behind network censorship. What gets on the air has less to do with ironclad standards and rock-solid practices, and more with who's the squeakiest wheel that day. It's a system built on give and take, especially when it comes to language.
Whenever I've been faced with questions from people who represent the Standards and Practices Department at a network, you always go, well, show me the standard, show me the practice. You know, where is it in writing that you can't say these things?
Go on. There is no list in writing. Instead, for over 50 years, censors have made judgment calls on what is and isn't acceptable TV language. In 1952, when I Love Lucy revealed Lucy was with child, she could describe her condition as expecting. But censors banned filthy words like pregnant.
And now, here's Jack.
In February 1960, Tonight Show host Jack Paar got even raunchier when he quipped about the different meanings of a WC or water closet. During the telecast later that night, NBC flushed the entire joke.
I censored it. Well, how dare they? Over what? A water closet is a toilet. Any person who's ever read a book knows that. But they decided that America couldn't stand that.
When Paar learned that he had been censored, everything hit the fan.
Jack Paar was finding how stupid it was. It was really ridiculous. And Jack Paar had great integrity. And his audience knew that.
The next day, Parr's audience could hear the defeat in his voice as he walked off his own show.
I'm leaving the Tonight Show. There must be a better way of making a living than this.
Paar eventually returned to late-night TV, but so did censorship.
I suggest that to be on the safe side for the next 10 minutes, you don't watch our program.
In 1964, Steve Allen warned would-be censors in advance that his guest, Lenny Bruce, would offend them.
What Lenny says will almost certainly shock the majority of you.
Sure enough, Bruce unleashed unimaginable profanity.
I'd like to perhaps give you a four-letter word that starts with an S and ends with a T. First time on television,
I'm not going to look at you when I say this, because this way I can't get busted. You don't know who said it. The band said it. Starts with an S and ends with a T, and the word is snot.
Lenny Bruce thought he had gotten away with approaching, but not crossing, the line of acceptable television language.
I'm just concerned with the constitutional issue here. It's the suppression of word.
But Steve Allen's sponsor, Westinghouse, wasn't so concerned with free speech. It put the entire show on ice. The program has never aired in full.
Beautiful and clean. Say, I'm very impressed myself.
How many times have you been arrested?
In which state?
Censors had a harder time suppressing profanity they didn't understand.
We had fun. I mean, without the censors, I don't think we would have had as much fun on Laugh-In, because it became a game.
Laugh-In launched jokes from the middle of a vast, fluid party, one where the censors were perpetual wallflowers.
And now, folks, it's sock it to me time.
We did one thing where Judy Carn was there, and she said, "Sock it to me," and her wig flew off. And she had, you know, and she said,
Well, I've never been bald before.
well, the network said we couldn't say that. And I said, why? They said, well, you're making fun of people with no hair. And they had no idea that it was a Stupp reference, right?
Shortly after NBC misplayed the ball, CBS tried to neuter bitch in a script for the sitcom Maude.
There was one show where Walter strayed, and at the end of the show, Maude and Walter came together, and she, in one embrace, said, "You son of a bitch."
After reading the script, CBS's chief of standards and practices bitched out producer Norman Lear.
And he saw the script and called me and said, "Of course you're not going to do that." And I said,
"B has to say that word. She has to say that word."
Lear convinced Standards and Practices America would agree it was necessary, and in 1973, Maude boldly went where no woman had gone before.
"Of course I forgive you, you son of a bitch."
She said, "Son of a bitch," and would you believe not one state seceded from the Union?
Nonetheless, censors remained vigilant, protecting America from smut and filth, like that penned by MASH producer Larry Gelbart. In 1975, CBS purged a script where Radar confronted a novice sentry.
Radar says, "Careful with that gun," and the kid says, "Excuse me, sir." He said, I'm a virgin at this. And they said, "You can't say virgin."
Gelbart lost the line, but won his revenge.
So the next week, I wrote a sequence in which Radar's on the bus, and he says to one guy, "What's your name?" And the guy said, "Whatever, Private Johnson." And he said, "And where are you from?" And he said, "The Virgin Islands, sir." So we got Virgin on the air, silly.
7 years later, St. Elsewhere took doctors off the battlefield, but kept up the war against censorship.
Anytime we could just poke at them, make them crazy where they couldn't do anything about it, we would do that.
You become like frat boys trying to get away with stuff just to see if you can pull something over on the censors.
When actual frat boys checked into St. Elsewhere with testicular cancer, censors crossed their legs.
Whereas the week before we had done a story about a mastectomy, and they had no problem with cutting off a woman's breast, but when it came to cutting off a guy's balls...
Wellspring of his progeny? The groin?
Or a ball, I should say. Suddenly they were in apoplexy. They were afraid that the audience was going to burn down Burbank.
Rather than inflame viewers, censors emasculated the language.
We were really concerned because even the doctor suddenly sounds completely irresponsible because he's going, like, lower, no, lower, no, little, stop there, yeah, that's where you have cancer. I mean, it becomes like a Benny Hill sketch.
Ultimately, the censors got ballsy and actually allowed the T word to make its network debut.
One of my testicles.
Come on, Ken, that's not even funny. For the first time in the history of television, the word testicle was said. And again, as I said, the world didn't end.
But protesters weren't so sure the world would survive the combustible premiere of NYPD Blue.
What I've heard is going to have too much violence, too much profanity and nudity and sex.
Ipsa this, you pissy little bitch.
They were afraid of this new horrible thing that was coming on the air that was going to be the fall of Western civilization as we know it.
When was the last time you tried going on a wagon?
When's the last time you tried growing tits? At the time, you had never heard some of the language. It did have a jarring effect.
Amidst constant protest and affiliate defections, the censors drew the line when Sipowicz accused a perp of banging someone.
And they said, no, you can't say that. So I said, okay. So then I had him say, you were rubbing up and down in Teresa's gunya. So now they said, you can't say that either. I says, what does gunya mean? They said, well, obviously it's foul.
He says, I made that word up. It means nothing. And he said, well, coming out of Sipowicz's mouth, it sounds filthy and we can't have it.
Is this the 100 you offered me in court today? Eat it! Eat it!
Still, the cops of the 15th Precinct enjoyed more liberties with language than the teens of Dawson's Creek.
When I first started Dawson's Creek, you couldn't use the word masturbate. They gave me a list of the words I couldn't use to describe masturbate. So I took it as a challenge and I'd make up words. I would just make up a phrase that no one's ever heard before. It was clear what it meant.
While the WB was wringing its hands over what teenagers were wrangling in theirs, CBS was loosening up its practices. And during a 1999 Chicago Hope episode, a forbidden four-letter word was suddenly expelled in prime time.
Now, we as surgeons know better than most that things occur in life that surpass all understanding. Shit happens. In a word, yes.
In April 2001, CBS again was up a proverbial creek when it televised On Golden Pond, Uncut. Twice in 2 years, CBS had made a big splash airing the S-word in prime time. But the network still bottled up late show host David Letterman.
Where in context of On Golden Pond, you could say the word shit or whatever the word was, but in the context of a real show, when it's not scripted, you can't say it.
Letterman thought CBS's contradictions were BS. To protest, he took a page from Madonna's transcript. 7 years earlier, the host had cringed as Madonna unleashed an F-word rant that blistered the bleeper's fingers. Now, Letterman himself challenged CBS and was silenced 9 times. Curiously, when Letterman replayed the Golden Pond clip midway through his rant, the BS again hit the air without a bleep.
Young man!
Coming up, a censored Vietnam sketch missing in action until now.
Look at my yard. You're gonna have to clean it up. Where's your leg?
And later, the TV movie that was censored too late.
I really didn't understand rape, but I can tell you when I walked away from it, I felt raped.
That's enough!
When we return with TV's most censored moments.
It's the best of Trio with back-to-back Trio originals. Tonight at 8:30 Eastern, Perfect Pitch. Then at 9, Art and Outrage. Then at 10, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Only on Trio.
Are you troubled with acne? You don't need a prescription or half your paycheck to help heal your acne and blemishes. Introducing Clear Action Acne Healing System. Compare our ingredient list with the popular Proactive Acne treatment with the same active ingredients. Now you can get fantastic clear skin results at half the Proactive price. Look at the ingredients. Proactive gives you 4 ounces of facial cleanser. So does Clear Action. Proactive gives you 4 ounces of facial toner. Clear Action gives you 6. Proactive gives you 2 ounces of repairing lotion. So does Clear Action. Now compare the price. Proactive costs $39.95, but Clear Action is yours for the amazing low price of only $19.95. That's half the price. Here's how it works. Clear Action's Deep Pore Facial Cleanser with microbeads removes dead skin cells, allowing the pharmaceutical-grade benzoyl peroxide to go into the pore. It immediately begins healing your acne and blemishes. Then apply the oil-reducing toner to neutralize excess oil and help even out your skin tone. Finally, apply Clear Action's Acne Repair Lotion to continue clearing up blackheads, acne, and blemishes. And it helps prevent future acne from popping up. Don't pay hundreds at the doctor's office or even $39 like with Proactive. Call now and get clear with Clear Action's Deep Pore Cleanser, Oil-Reducing Toner, and Acne Repair Lotion for half the price of Proactive. That's right, it's yours for only $19.95. And listen to this, there are no clubs to join and no memberships to cancel to get this fantastic price.
I made the switch from Proactive to Clear Action, and I love it.
And if it doesn't meet every one of your expectations, just send back the empty bottles and we'll refund your purchase price. Call now and we'll also send you a free sample of the amazing Clear Action Clarifying Mask, the $20 value, yours to keep.
With no celebrities to pay, we can pass the money savings on to you. Call 1-800-425-0909 now. Clear Action is also available at Walgreens and other fine retailers.
All June, Trio asks, what's offensive? What's funny? What's both? With Lenny Bruce Uncensored, the one and only time his entire act was caught on film.
A brief word now about some dummies in our country.
A comic legend, thrown in jail for making people uncomfortable and angry.
How the Jew and the Negro got into show business.
He changed the rules of comedy. For the first time ever on TV.
Shut up, you putt!
Lenny Bruce Uncensored premieres Monday, June 2nd at 9 Eastern. Part of Uncensored Comedy. Only in June. Only on Trio. Pop Culture TV.
When television takes on the establishment, it wanders into dangerous ground. After all, stations rely on the government for broadcasting licenses and big business for sponsorship. Out of self-preservation, TV doesn't step over any lines that threaten the bottom line.
Well, the mentality of the networks, for the most part, is one of safety, vanilla, middle-of-the-road programming.
Everybody seems to lose sight of this one fact. Television is what happens between the commercials. Television exists for the commercials.
For Edward R. Murrow, television had a higher calling. A founding father of TV journalism, Murrow adhered to only one bottom line: the truth.
Are you a member of the Communist Party, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Are you a member of the Communist Party? No, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
In the 1950s, while Senator Joseph McCarthy was suppressing suspected communists, Murrow decided it was McCarthy himself who had to be put down.
It is my devotion to the principles upon which this nation rests, justice, freedom, and fairness, which set me aside from Senator McCarthy.
The importance of Edward R. Murrow taking on, outing in a sense McCarthy for the menace that he was the fact that no one else in the country had done it, from the president on down. Everyone was being blown away out of fear.
CBS seemed scared of McCarthy too. The network wouldn't promote the McCarthy episode, so Murrow had to dig into his own pockets to buy ads.
CBS was frightened. There were a lot of people who agreed with Joseph McCarthy.
Thanks in part to Murrow's report, McCarthy's reign of terror soon ended. But threats to free speech didn't.
Well, certainly there's a time when advertisers were the principal form of pressure, and so broadcasters were censored by advertisers.
In April of 1959, Playhouse 90 staged a live broadcast of Judgment at Nuremberg. The courtroom drama about ethical dilemmas and Nazi atrocities had some ethical difficulties of its own.
The American Gas Association was an advertiser, and they obviously were reluctant to references to the gas chamber.
Somehow fearing viewers would blame household appliances for the horrors of the Holocaust, the Gas Association snuffed all references to gas chambers from the script. When cast members on the live telecast rebelled and said the phrase anyway, CBS technicians censored them in mid-sentence.
But how in the name of God can you ask me to understand the extermination of millions of men, women, and innocent children for the sake of a political expediency?
They cut the line because the sponsor was... We did not want that awful association made between what was the horror and the misery of Nazi Germany with the nice chrome wonderfully antiseptically clean, beautiful kitchen appliances that they were selling.
Every inch is a cinch to clean.
Now, this is an example of sponsor interference which is so beyond logic and which is so beyond taste. This I rebel against.
In the 1960s, rebellion was everywhere, but television hesitated to show it.
In the mid-60s, television reflected very little of alternative voices. There was no satire or criticism of policies or anything like that.
Watching salmon being caught is exciting.
In real life, a new generation was turning everything inside out. Hair came down, skirts went up. And by 1967, Tom and Dick Smothers wanted to hold a mirror up to that changing America.
Our show was timed with the scene of the accident, which was civil rights and we had more.
First integrated marriage takes place in South today.
And do you, Willa Jackson, take Sally Smith to be your lawfully wedded wife until death do you part?
I do.
The rope, please.
They said, well, it's controversial, and we like that, but we also want everybody to agree with you. They didn't want any letters. They didn't understand.
It's controversial and have everybody agree.
When CBS itself didn't agree with Tom and Dick, the Standards and Practices Department unleashed its blue pencils. Thinking this bit about censors, starring guest Elaine May, would hit too close to home, CBS deleted the whole sketch. It has never aired.
Ed?
Yeah?
Oh, Ed, if only we could have been here when the Lord created man.
You're so right.
We could have cut out so many unnecessary parts.
Yeah. I said, oh, this crosses a line. I'm saying, what's the line? It was vague for all of us of what we could talk about.
Good script.
By the third season, the Smothers talked more and more about censorship itself.
Nothing funny in this. Here you are, boys. We're through censoring your show.
But censors usually had the last laugh. When Tom and Dick satirized the 1968 election, CBS took out the sketch and replaced it with, of all things, a 5-minute Nixon for President ad.
Nixon's the one.
The battles between the Smothers and CBS came to a head Easter week of 1969. Tom had invited comedian David Steinberg back just months after he joked about Moses and God.
It caused a furor. Got the most letters ever written to CBS in complaint about anything. Tommy and Dick said, this is great. We struck a chord. Let's do another one. And they told him, if Steinberg does another sermon, you're going to be thrown off the air.
When Steinberg performed a new sermonette about Jonah and the whale, CBS kept its word.
And the Gentiles, as their wont from time to time, threw the Jew overboard.
I said, oh, no, the show is inappropriate sermonette by David Steinberg. It's Easter, and you're fired.
And they threw him off the air.
Suck it to me, honey.
With the Smothers gone, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In inherited the torch as primetime's leading anarchists.
We said things that were just not being said. We all were at that point pointing out that the emperor not only had on no clothes, but was not very generously endowed, and it scared them.
The establishment was scared of Laugh-In for good reason. The show kept biting the hand that fed it.
We had cigarette sponsors, and I would not cut the salute to smoking.
I've been smoking since I was 4. Who says it stunts your growth?
I smoked, and the doctor said I have the lungs of a 12-year-old. It was the first operation of its kind.
Huh? Certainly I saved a lot of money by rolling my own. How do you think I could afford this swell iron lung?
In this case, big tobacco's bigger greed won out over censorship.
And they stayed on the show because they wanted that audience.
In 1973, Laugh-In alum Lily Tomlin found out the hard way that television wasn't always so free of censorship. Entitled War Games, this sketch from Tomlin's CBS special compared combat as played by little boys with that played by big boys. But CBS didn't think America was ready to have war visit their doorsteps. The sketch has never been seen on television, until now.
Young man, I have been screaming for you. Get in this house. Look at my yard. You're gonna have to clean it up. Where's your leg? You're just gonna have to go find it. I guess you think legs grow on trees. No, not now. You come on in the house. Supper's ready. I said come on in, leg or no leg.
Even as it was aborting war games, CBS had to deal with another unwanted pregnancy.
Vivian, I'm pregnant.
In its first season, Maude discussed pregnancy in a way Lucy Ricardo could never have imagined.
When you were young, abortion was a dirty word. It's not anymore.
This was the height of the feminist movement. These things were very much on everyone's minds.
Abortion might have been a universal issue, but that universe didn't include situation comedies. CBS ordered producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin to keep it that way.
Norman and we agreed we'd just go make it. And if they didn't want to broadcast, it's fine. And they could get themselves a couple of producers and move on.
In the end, CBS gave in to Yorkin and Lear. Although the producers were convinced Maude should have an abortion, she wasn't.
And Maude still agonized. And finally, in one penultimate moment with her husband, she said, "Walter, am I right?" And he said,
"For you, Maude, for me, in the privacy of our own lives, you're doing the right thing."
I really never thought one way or another about an abortion. I just thought, well, it's something one has if one has to have it. And of course the mail came in. My God, what mail we got.
When the episode was rerun in the summer of '73, anti-abortion groups tried but failed to keep it off the air. Would-be censors aren't always picketing outside network offices. Sometimes they work inside.
Please consider yourself to be under oath. Yes or no? Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
In a case that inspired the award-winning film The Insider, internal network politics led to the censorship of a news story. In 1995, tobacco whistleblower Jeffrey Wigand told 60 Minutes that tobacco companies knowingly added nicotine to make smokers addicted to cigarettes. But CBS silenced Wigand's whistle.
It was communicated to me by one executive in the news division that the corporation would not risk its assets on this story.
It wasn't just fear that motivated CBS and its chairman, Lawrence Tisch. At the time, Tisch's son, Andrew, was entwined in a business deal with Wigand's company, Brown & Williamson.
I think that we were deceived and lied to. I think that more is going on here than we even know now.
Corporate America can be very powerful. Is there intimidation? Yeah.
Instead of 60 Minutes, it was the Wall Street Journal which finally told the public what Wigand knew. CBS finally aired the report in 1996, but by then the story and the censorship of it was old news.
60 Minutes, I think they probably took the course of least resistance this time.
Some programs aim their darts even closer to home, such as when Robert Smigel poked fun at his own network with a 1998 cartoon.
That's a cartoon that I did kind of as a joke in my head. I had this idea about conspiracy theory rock instead of Schoolhouse Rock.
Airing on Saturday Night Live, conspiracy theory rock skewered media giants, including NBC owner General Electric.
Media is controlled by a few corporations thanks to deregulation by the FCC.
I thought, oh, okay, well, it's NBC. This could be funny to just go after the big media conglomerates, and including GE, and I was pretty impressed that they even put it on.
You contribute to this chain every time you buy a product sponsored on this show. That's what NBC doesn't want you to know.
Like Laughing Before It, Smigel's cartoon had bitten the hand that fed it. But this time, the hand swatted back. After one and only one airing, Smigel's cartoon was cut out of all future reruns of that SNL episode.
Big lie.
When it comes to both comedy and controversy, timing is everything. On September 17, 2001, just 6 days after the deadliest attack ever on American civilians, politically incorrect host Bill Maher might have missed his mark.
We have been the cowards, lobbing cruise missiles from 2,000 miles away. That's cowardly.
That is a
Staying in the airplane when it hits the building. Say what you want about it, not cowardly.
I know Bill's mind. What he was trying to say is really something okay. What it came out as was not as okay as it should have been.
It was just a thing that I think even Bill feels he shouldn't have said it, because it was a dumb thing to say.
I thought Bill Maher was an asshole. I think it was a very poor judgment on his part.
You can't say what he said. The president had to take him to task for that.
With American patriotism at a fever pitch, even the White House warned Maher to be less free with his speech.
The reminders to all Americans that they need to watch what they say, watch what they do, and this is not a time for remarks like that. There never is.
Clearly, at the time, the need to muzzle a comedian supplanted the very cornerstone of American society.
The nerve. Loose lips sink ships. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's the same thing. Ari Fleischer should be ashamed of himself.
It was very McCarthy-ish. He said people better watch what they're saying. Watch what you're saying really means watch what you think.
All he had to do the next day was say, you know what, I got to watch what I say, and that would have dispelled all of that, and it would have been fine, and people would actually like Ari Fleischer. He didn't, and so they don't.
Coming up, mixing vice with violence.
We intercut the love scene with her being strangled, and that they went crazy about.
And later, the popsicles that melted switchboards.
The censor didn't cut them, and I thought, wow, maybe they're not that bad. And all hell broke loose.
When we return with TV's most censored moments.
You're watching Trio. All June, Trio asks, what's offensive, what's funny, what's both? When Kurt Anderson goes one-on-one with comedian Dennis Miller.
The Catholic Church has lost all credibility. It crashes and burns, that's fine with me.
Bernie Mac.
Can't call a little kid a faggot.
And writer Robert Smigel.
We did a sketch called Porn for Kids. It's all embarrassing on some level.
Join them as they spend FaceTime with Kurt Anderson. The Trio original series, back-to-back episodes, premieres Sunday, June 1st at 8 Eastern, part of Uncensored Comedy. Only in June, only on Trio. Pop Culture TV.
Here, pick up line 2.
These are for you.
Thanks.
Got room for these?
Is it your birthday?
I just drove a few friends home last night.
Bailey's reminds you, being a designated driver is always appreciated.
Keeping a relationship alive? It takes work.
Introducing something unique. New KY warming liquid.
Creates a gentle warming sensation on contact.
That'll work. New KY warming liquid personal lubricant. There's never been anything like it. And for couples everywhere, it's creating quite a sensation. For more information and special savings, visit KY.com. New KY warming liquid.
You're watching Trio.
Ever wonder how some investors always seem to know what's coming? Barron's. It's how money becomes wealth. No other weekly financial publication moves the markets like Barron's. It provides the knowledge, insight, and foresight that allow you to stay one step ahead, not one step behind. Subscribe now and you'll also receive this Barron's Stock Evaluator free. It lets your computer help you turn money into wealth. Get 13 weeks of Barron's and the stock evaluator, all for only $39.
Call now, toll free, 800-927-5522. That's 800-927-5522.
You're watching Trio.
When it comes to violence, censors are impaled on the horns of a dilemma. To sanitize mayhem makes it more palatable and therefore more acceptable.
I think that the biggest disservice that the cartoon violence showing people getting shot and run over and there's no blood on the ground, you want it to be as disturbing as possible.
Producers also walk a fine line. Images that are too disturbing may cause viewers to change the channel.
You know, if you've ever been to a shooting, it is like somebody dropped red paint on the ground. I mean, there is a lot of blood in the body.
In the late 1950s, no program got closer to the horror of violence than The Untouchables. Sponsored by Lucky Strike cigarettes, the show portrayed gangsters as such violent thugs that even the mafia complained. Alberto Anastasia, head of one of New York's 5 families, ordered his dock workers to stop distribution of Lucky Strikes.
And I was called and said, told to go call Albert Anastasia and tell him to stop it. And I said, are you crazy?
Not wanting to find out firsthand how much blood the human body holds, Schneider promised ABC he would curtail all references to the mafia.
I got blasted by our program department for agreeing never to use the word mafia again.
But the allure of violence was too much for ABC to resist. In 1961, it landed in hot water again with an episode of Bus Stop. Directed by Robert Altman and starring pop idol Fabian as a charismatic, seductive psychopath, the episode A Lion Walks Among Us horrified TV audiences. It was one of the first times ever that a TV killer got away with murder. But ABC president Ali Trays wasn't so lucky. Outraged viewers called for his head and got it. Congress even joined the posse, holding hearings on TV violence. The hearings created new guidelines about televising violence, including a ban on showing judo and karate techniques. But in 1974, with no explicit ban on teenage lesbian gang rapes, NBC proudly presented the shocking TV movie Born Innocent. At 8 p.m., no less. Starring the Exorcist's Linda Blair, it told a streetwise story about wayward reform school girls.
I did not realize that it was going to be so controversial. Of course, it became one of the most controversial television films ever made.
Born Innocent had an advisory, but nothing could have prepared viewers for what they were about to see. 8:17 p.m., September 10th, 1974. Born Innocent barged into America's living rooms with an assault of unimaginable violence. This scene hasn't been televised in full since.
You know, that took us 5 hours to shoot. I was shy, inhibited, and working in a shower. I really didn't understand rape, but I can tell you when I walked away from it, I felt raped.
A provocative story of a young girl who is sexually assaulted in a reform school. Now, you got every teenager in America tuned in. You got their attention right there. Are they going to see it as a life lesson, as a tale of what not to do, a moral story? No, they want to see the girl get broom handled, and I'm sure that every pervert in America can watch this show and get off on it. You know what I mean?
I did not realize the effect that the movie would have. I had no idea. I was just doing my job, trying to make sense of it.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough.
After 3,000 complaints, NBC agreed to edit the movie for future runs. But life was about to imitate art.
A couple of nights later on the beach near San Francisco, a young girl was raped, if that's the proper word, violated by a beer bottle. The idea was that the teenagers who had committed that crime might have been inspired by that television show.
A movie which tried to warn against teen crime had instead provoked it. The girl's family sued NBC, which claimed protection under the First Amendment.
The Supreme Court of California has said that when words and conduct cause harm by negligence, the First Amendment is never a defense.
A courtroom drama seesawed back and forth.
Judge Robert Dosey ruled that the First Amendment, the freedom of expression issue, could be used as part of the defense strategy in the Born Innocent trial.
NBC eventually won its court battle. Even so, Born Innocent gave TV such a bad name that the big three networks all agreed to suppress themselves.
The president of CBS, Arthur Taylor, thought that he had a solution by suggesting that the first hour of prime time, 8 to 9, would be devoid of programs that were not suitable for all family viewing.
During the 1975-76 season, all three networks put the family viewing hour into effect. Suddenly, 8 o'clock was no place for high-rated violent action dramas like The Rookies.
It was a series about cops. It was a series about cops dealing with violence. And that was part and parcel of every episode.
Booted from its time slot, The Rookies never drew the same ratings and was canceled by '76. Claiming the family viewing policy squashed free speech, several writers took the networks and FCC to court and won. Over the next decade, producers pushed free expression to the limit. The 80s phenomenon Miami Vice combined an MTV flair with choreographed violence and often danced on the razor's edge of acceptable television.
Don was going to town on Melanie, as anybody who was there saying there was no acting involved. It was just, you know, kind of leave the cameras running for half an hour and come back and we'll do another take. And we also had Vanity was murdered by some professional wrestlers, and we intercut the love scene with her being strangled. And that they went crazy about, because that was intermixing sex and violence.
NBC's Standards and Practices tried to ice this episode of Vice.
We kind of delivered the film wet, you know. Listen, I think this might be a problem. They're going to have a problem getting this on the satellite.
To the censor's surprise, audiences had no complaints with the show's colorful mayhem. Violence became even more cartoonish in 1990 on Fox's The Simpsons.
Itchy and Scratchy has always been a troublesome thing on the show, I think. Particularly, I think more so in the early years when people didn't know what was coming.
In The Simpsons' early years, Fox was smarting from advertiser boycotts led by Michigan mother Terry Rakolta.
The network has been saying that television is a guest entertainer and storyteller in your home. And because it is a guest, it shouldn't do anything to offend the host, spoil the children, or upset the horses.
She was a housewife in Michigan and started a campaign and almost got sponsors to pull out, which was amazing that one woman could do this.
Before Rakolta could target them, The Simpsons fired a volley at her.
What kind of warped human being would find that funny?
The episode where Marge complained about Itchy and Scratchy was based on the Terry Rakolta incident.
This is the kind of entertainment they think is suitable for younger and more impressionable viewers?
There's, people out there who live to be offended. And, you can't just cater to them all the time.
In the end, Marge comes to her senses, and Itchy and Scratchy resume their bloodbaths.
I guess one person can make a difference, but most of the time, they probably shouldn't.
But even the most concerned mothers can't always protect young eyes from violence. On May 1st, 1998, Los Angeles television stations interrupted children's cartoons with breaking news about a man staging a high-profile protest. At first, it was just another hassle on the LA freeways, but not for long.
We saw him run back to the truck, grab the gun, and I said, oh my God, at that point. And then it finally hit us what he might do with that gun.
He's got his long gun waving it around now. And as you said, Stan, I'm sure he's burnt because that was a pretty good fire that engulfed very quickly.
And before we knew it, in a matter of seconds, he blew his brains out on the air.
Oh, Stan.
The on-air close-up death angered viewers who reasoned that the stations should have known better.
We're not in the censorship business. We're in the business of giving people the news, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, sometimes it isn't pretty.
The ugly conclusion to the story prompted news departments across the country to consider the necessity of self-censorship when it comes to breaking news. Nothing tested this necessity like the events of September 11th. At first, news cameras showed the graphic, unedited drama of planes hitting buildings and victims plummeting from windows. But almost immediately, discretion prevailed, and even newsworthy gore didn't make it on the air. 6 months later, CBS presented an inside look at the tragedy, 911. The network broke new ground by allowing several variations of the F word on the air for the first time. But the program was as notable for what it didn't show. The filmmakers were in a position to film burning and dead bodies, but instead turned away in a rare kind of self-censorship. After September 11th, television just may have developed a perspective on what's truly offensive. Coming up, the routine that was too edgy for an edgy show.
They're next. You think when Jesus comes back, he's gonna want to see the cross, man?
And later, TV goes gay.
The things that the censors go crazy about are so weird.
When we return with TV's most censored moments.
It's the best of Trio with back-to-back Trio originals. Tonight at 8:30 Eastern, Perfect Pitch. Then at 9, Art and Outrage. Then at 10, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Only on Trio.
Mr. Goodwrench, who is this one and only GM expert? Let me get this straight. He does brake work.
Yep.
Diagnostics.
Yep.
Wheel alignments.
Yep.
Root canal.
Yep.
Gotcha. And he replaced your tires.
Sure did.
Oh, that's good melon. What, does he wear a cape?
A cape? Why would he wear a cape?
Find Mr. Goodwrench at over 7,000 GM dealerships nationwide.
You know, I could use a partner on this. Are you in?
As long as I'm home by 7.
Great.
No other weekly financial publication moves the markets like Barron's. It provides the knowledge, insight, and foresight that allow you to stay one step ahead. Subscribe now and you'll also receive this Barron's Stock Evaluator free. It lets your computer help you turn money into wealth. Get 13 weeks of Barron's and the Stock Evaluator, all for only $39.
Call now toll-free 800-927-6565. That's 800-927-6565.
From first read to final cut,
Action!
Trio's new original series goes inside the making of a primetime show.
We do not do prison rape jokes.
TV out of the box. The Shield, Monday at 8 Eastern, only on Trio. You're watching Trio.
The early world of TV was populated by spotless white people coping with mildly irksome problems.
Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, of course, Lucy. They were all family-oriented, and I don't remember any memorable, groundbreaking shows. Situation comedy was pap.
If the biggest problem
a husband and wife had was that the boss was coming to dinner and the roast was ruined. Or mom dented the fender and how are we going to keep dad from knowing till we fix it? By that standard, the world was, you know, there was no racism, there were no problems.
When TV has tackled real issues like religion or the relationship between the races, it has often sent censor types into a panic.
Now, you see, Andy, first, the atom splits into what they call a monocle. And then the monocle busts and breaks down into what they call neutrons, photons, fig Newtons, and morons.
In 1951, Amos and Andy made the jump from radio to TV with some major cast changes. On radio, white actors had played the blatantly buffoonish leads. On TV, black actors took over. The show immediately drew huge ratings and protests to match.
We felt that this was a false image, something that didn't represent us.
I don't think that it reflected the wrong image of black people. I think it was the fact that it was the only image of black people.
Claiming Amos and Andy perpetuated stereotypes, the NAACP demanded that the only black show on TV be canceled. In 1953, it was.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
By the mid-60s, NBC had brought color into America's living rooms, though some would-be censors were still grappling with issues in black and white. In 1968, singer Petula Clark hosted a TV special sponsored by Plymouth Chrysler and invited Harry Belafonte to share the spotlight.
Blessed are the meek, they say. We sang it the way we'd rehearsed it, standing together. And of course, because it's a very, very emotional song, I took hold of his arm.
Nancy touched my arm. A very gentle human moment. Certainly a very friendly thing to do.
But to the sponsor, that gentle human moment was anything but.
He didn't like it. And that he also felt that it was not to the best interests of his company nor the viewing audience to see this touch.
Clark and Belafonte refused to reshoot the song, Plymouth Chrysler threatened to pull its ads, and a full-blown censorship scandal erupted. But when the scandal hit the media, Plymouth Chrysler backed away, and NBC went ahead with the show as planned. 2 years later, children's television fell victim to some childish censorship. In 1970, officials in Mississippi condemned Sesame Street's integrated neighborhood as offensive to some Mississippians. The state banned Sesame Street from its public TV stations for a month before coming to its senses. Starting in 1971, the biggest grouch on television gave racial and religious groups a fat new target. Archie Bunker.
Now, let me tell you something. If your spicks and your spades want their rightful share of the American dream, let them get out there and hustle for it just like I did.
He was fearful that too much was happening in his culture at the same time. My God, blacks were coming into the neighborhood.
I never said your black beauties was lazy. It's just their systems is geared a little slower than the rest of us.
Rarely had a sitcom poked at bigotry, and never with such a sharp stick. The network wanted a daring show, but All in the Family's uncompromising pilot made CBS nervous.
Interference by the network started before we went on the air. The network was afraid of the first show.
On the very first show, we thought we would try it out, and we did every single one, Jungle Bunny, Hebe.
What do you know about it, you dumb Pollock? All right, I'm a Pollock. You sure are. You're a Pollock joke.
The day before All in the Family premiered, CBS asked Lear and Yorkin to substitute a tamer episode for the pilot.
What I had told the network is I won't be around if we don't go this way. We have to jump into the water and get all wet.
So what's the matter with black beauties?
It's nicer than when he called them coons.
Archie quickly offended his way to the top of the Nielsen ratings. And as All in the Family broke new ground, it paved the way for other provocative shows. By the mid-'70s, minorities had wedged a foot in the door. Still, smash hits such as Good Times had trouble keeping the door open. A white producer even tried to diffuse Jimmy Walker's catchphrase, dynamite.
He said it sounded too revolutionary coming out the mouth of a black man. It sounded like we were gonna kill somebody or blow up the world. I was in the, it's just a saying, get real.
At the time, race was all the rage. Formerly lily white networks took unprecedented chances, such as when NBC gave Richard Pryor his own series.
They were excited about it because it was Richard Pryor, because they were in love with Richard, because it was Richard mania.
But the network soon got way more Richard than they bargained for.
They're going to say, okay, we now have to sanitize him for the country.
What NBC saw as sanitizing, Pryor saw as sterilizing.
He said, they're taking everything but my penis, so I'm going to do it where like the dolls. I don't have anything the way they do dolls.
In 1977, Pryor opened his series clad in a bodysuit that made him look as if he had given up everything for NBC, even the family jewels. But NBC censored the joke about being censored and replaced the opening with a black screen. After 5 episodes, Pryor quit his own show.
There was a lot of confinement, and there was a lot of control, and he didn't want to be controlled.
In the 80s, CBS tackled the issue of having a real-life racist on its air, as football analyst Jimmy the Greek's mouth went out of control.
They were asking him about football and basketball, all that stuff, about why do blacks excel?
The slave owner would breed his big black to his big woman, so that he could have a big black kid, see? Now, I mean, that's where it all started. If they take over coaching like everybody wants them to, there's not going to be anything left for the white people.
He told the truth. He said that he's surprised that all the white boys in sports aren't Warner boys, because genetically blacks are better and were stronger.
Right or wrong, the Greek voiced an opinion too hot for CBS. After 13 years, the network suddenly decided its odds maker was a racist. A day after he made his remark, CBS sacked Jimmy the Greek.
That was it for him.
4 years after Jimmy the Greek ruined his career, Sinead O'Connor almost tore hers apart when she ripped up a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live.
Church spokesmen say the Pope will no doubt forgive Sinead O'Connor for her bout of Vatican bashing on NBC's Saturday Night Live. Here's what it sounded like.
Fight the real enemy.
NBC was crushed with more than 4,000 complaints and deleted Sinead's unrehearsed statement from all future broadcasts. Sinead O'Connor caught Saturday Night Live by surprise. But when David Letterman booked comedian Bill Hicks in 1993, Hicks warned them in advance he was going to joke about Jesus.
Any really great comedian, and there's no doubt that Hicks was a great comedian, their job, they can't see a boundary without trying to cross it.
He was surprised that he had gotten all that material approved, and that's an important point. They had approved it twice before he went on the air.
It was a mistake on the part of somebody who was working on the staff, who should have been wise enough to know that it might be offensive to the censors.
Footage from Hicks' actual Letterman appearance remains locked in the CBS vaults. This is the material deemed too hot for TV.
A lot of Christians wear crosses around their necks. You think when Jesus comes back, he's going to want to see a cross around? Kind of like going up to Jackie Onassis with a rifle pendant on, you know?
Hicks cut the profanity from his Late Show set, but the remaining Jesus references still pressed hot buttons.
It had to do with his words offending censors at the network, who in turn would think that those words would offend Jerry Falwell, their sponsors. As responsible broadcasters, we cut the piece.
They said that CBS had deemed the material, these are quotation marks, unsuitable.
I don't know what I would have done differently, honestly. I mean, at the time, I think we did the right thing.
I mean, they pretend to be this hip, late-night
talk show, when in actuality they're as mainstream as anything.
The battle against censorship was the last Bill Hicks would ever fight. He died 4 months later at the age of 32.
He died in pure white heat, which is probably the way a comedian like him should go out, you know, flaming.
4 years after Hicks slaughtered sacred cows, ABC jumped into the fray with its groundbreaking drama, Nothing Sacred, about an irreverent priest.
I thought, wouldn't this be interesting to be able to show a priest who is determinedly engaged in the mess of the world?
Why, what are you afraid of?
I'm afraid that I might love you. That aspect of the character, which to me seems so believable and effective and kind of beautiful in a way, was also that aspect that kind of pissed people off.
Despite the commotion, ABC blessed the bold and risk-taking series with its complete support, until it saw the pilot.
But I'm gonna have an abortion.
We had said to ABC, we really want to come out of the gate with all guns blazing, and this is going to be a controversial show. Let's not run away from that. Let's make it a controversial show. And ABC went, yeah.
One problem, the controversial pilot featured a priest with the AIDS virus.
ABC took one look at it and said, forget it.
Though the HIV priest episode had been shot and edited, ABC refused to air it. Nothing Sacred was canceled after 1 season. An HIV priest has still never been shown.
You have to get up early to call God into the city.
I think it becomes de facto censorship. You can call it anything you want. They didn't air the episode because of its content.
Censorship can strike any show, from Nothing Sacred to the show about nothing, Seinfeld. When Cosmo Kramer accidentally set a Puerto Rican flag on fire and had to stomp out the blaze, protests from Puerto Rican groups stomped the offending episode right out of syndication.
It was such an obvious joke, and that people tried to manipulate it into some sort of issue was, I thought, pretty weak.
3 years later, Law & Order was denied censor immunity when it also set an episode during New York's Puerto Rican Day.
You guys finally got the defendant you wanted, didn't you, huh? As long as he's Latino, you got exactly the right kind of hit on your stick.
Puerto Rican activists took offense at the very notion that their parade could get out of control.
Oh, this is gonna get ugly.
Under pressure, NBC apologized and agreed to never run the offending episode again. To Wolf, the protests prove censorship is alive and well.
I thought that, you know, they were running dogs. It was shameless and shameful.
Later that year, NBC found itself apologizing again. Once more, NBC had failed to watch out for its watchdogs, who were offended by this jury duty joke, which comedian Sarah Silverman originally told on Conan O'Brien.
So I'm filling out the form, and my friend said, why don't you write something really inappropriate, like I hate chinks, you know? And I'm thinking, yeah, but when you think about it, I don't want people to think that of me, you know? I just want to get out of jury duty. So I just filled out the form, and I wrote, I love chinks.
The joke raised the hackles of Asian American watchdogs.
To me, a watchdog group is usually like just some guy who has a fax machine and a TV who just sits there all day waiting to be offended.
According to MANA, the Media Action Network for Asian Americans, Silverman's punchline wasn't just offensive, it was dangerous.
I don't think people really understand the hurtfulness of this word. I mean, whether it's nigger or chink or Jap, these words have been used to subjugate minorities, to make them out to be less than human. Once we make these people less than human, we can do awful things to them.
NBC and Conan O'Brien apologized for the hurt the show might have caused. But Silverman herself remained defiant as she faced off against MANA director Guy Aoki.
I feel that that joke is a joke that points a finger at racism, just like it's your job to point your finger at racism, just doing it in a different way that you do it.
I think you're giving yourself too much credit.
In my opinion, I didn't say anything that was offensive. I certainly didn't say anything that was racist. I used racist language.
I think if you're going to do a joke about racism, and you're making a point about racism, then you should be allowed to say any racial slur. The comedy has to reflect reality.
In this case, MANA had the last laugh. Silverman's joke was censored from all rebroadcasts of that episode of Conan O'Brien. Late-night comedy shows are usually as edgy as network TV gets, but even they have trouble deciding how edgy is acceptable. In 2002, the day after Denzel Washington and Halle Berry won Academy Awards, The Tonight Show allowed Arsenio Hall to joke that Oscar was Swahili for Showtime at the Apollo. On that very night, when white writer Amy Sedaris made an almost identical joke on The Late Show with David Letterman, it was deleted. 50 years after Amos and Andy and 3 decades after Archie Bunker, the issues of race and religion are still too molten to be harnessed by standards and practices.
There are some rules, but for the most part, there's no set of rules.
Coming up, public television and private parts.
I don't mind tit. Knockers is the one I don't care for.
When we return with TV's most censored moments.
You're watching Trio. Every night in June, Trio brings you uncensored comedy.
If I believed the Jews killed God, I'd worship the Jews.
A month exploring what's offensive, what's funny, and what's both.
The humor is almost defined by the limits of what you can do or can't do on TV.
World premiere stand-up performances, exclusive movies, TV series, and Trio originals. 30 days of comedy that completely changed the rules.
Let's all look here to fact.
Uncensored comedy, every night at 9 Eastern, only in June, only on Trio. Pop Culture TV.
Suarez, I have some good news. I'm taking you out.
Oh, you said you had good news.
I do. I just saved a bunch of money on my car insurance by switching to Geico. Give me the ball.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
When you have credit card problems, it feels like you're surrounded by debt.
That's the time to call Debt Dynamics. I reduce my payments and have only one small monthly bill.
Debt Dynamics professional staff will analyze your situation and show you the best solution with nonprofit credit counseling or a home equity loan. Just call.
I thought my only way out was bankruptcy.
Call Debt Dynamics for the right solution.
We reduced our interest rates.
So now we can actually see our balances dropping.
Call Debt Dynamics today and free yourself from debt. Call this number now.
You're watching Trio.
New programs dealing with sex should present sex from the Judeo-Christian perspective. Sex as a beautiful gift given by God to be shared by a husband and wife should be the norm.
If sex is a gift, it's one that censors would like to return unopened.
I remember once a censor coming to me on the Letterman show, and there was a guest whose nipples were protruding from her shirt. And they said, you have to tell her to put Band-Aids on the nipples.
A good part of my life has been wasted passionate arguments about, oh, come on, it doesn't look that much like a penis. It looks like a cylindrical object.
We are the last country beside the entire Muslim world who acts like this.
Take me home.
TV's hang-ups about body parts and sex began where all hang-ups begin, in childhood. In the 50s, the only dick on TV was a vice president, Beaver was just a rascally kid, and boinking was simply a sound effect. Flesh, sex, body parts, all the fun stuff was strictly taboo to TV. Well, mostly. Groucho Marx's You Bet Your Life was a game show on the surface, but it was less about taking risks than being risque.
How did you meet your husband, Alma?
Well, we had a picnic in...
Well, I'm sure you did.
Groucho's shows were so packed with racy innuendo that in order to satisfy the censors, the show was cut in half. The hour-long taping was edited down to a presentable 30 minutes.
You know, it doesn't go by size. A man's size has nothing to do with his ability in any way.
Oh, man, have you ever been made love to by a Frenchman?
Not that I can recall.
In 1965, Barbara Eden shimmied onto the scene in I Dream of Jeannie. Certainly any man with a genie would have wished for some more skin, but NBC corked that bottle right away.
You couldn't show a belly button for years and years and years. It's as though, you know, God airbrushed everybody just before they were born.
Few viewers were still rubbing their lamps wishing for a glimpse of Eden's navel when, at age 50, she finally revealed it in a 1985 reunion movie. In the late 60s, as TV was shifting to color, Turn On went off color.
It appeared to depict a young lady who was somewhat intensely interested in getting at that pill. And a sexually aggressive female at that point was not really heard of.
The sketch from the show's first episode managed to slip past censors in the East, but Turn On was turned off by the time it got to the Midwest.
Turn On was basically canceled by one guy in Cleveland at a local affiliate. And he went on in the middle of the show and said, this program will not be seen this evening or ever.
It's time to turn on.
And he pulled the plug on it and then called all the affiliates, and it was canceled before it got to California, which shows you the power of one stupid man.
4 years later, PBS had some affiliate trouble of its own with its presentation of the play Steam Bath.
Nice set of maracas on it, Owen.
Damn right.
When actors dropped their towels, 20 affiliates dropped the telecast. But the rest of the country saw Valerie Perrine reveal the first breasts on TV when she bared her primetime pair. While Steam Bath aroused America,
Take this thing up. Jesus.
a Chuck Barris's Gong Show triggered its gag reflex.
Our next act is a big disappointment.
A talent show, the Gong Show started at the lowest common denominator and said, start digging.
Chuck perpetuated that feeling. He wanted it to be as far out there as you could go. And so we went.
The Gong Show was so puerile, so sophomoric, it needed 2 chaperones before going out in public.
We had 2 censors, 2 people from Standards and Practice, who felt that they were doing their job by lopping off an act every tape day.
All right. Yeah, I tell you where I'm coming from. Wow. Yeah,
Just that act can't go on. That act's off the air.
All right. Well, thank you. You can take your little musical schlong and go right out the door.
And beat that problem, what I would do was I would bring an act down to the studio who was atrocious, lewd, licentious, vile. That act I would bring down. The censors were horrified when they see that. Lop that off, and that left me all the other acts to deal with.
Gong Show marching on.
And one of those acts was a pair of twins called the Popsicle Twins. They skipped out on the stage with 2 orange popsicles, and they gave, a head to these popsicles. And the censor didn't cut them. And I thought, wow, maybe they're not that bad. And I put them on the air. And all hell broke loose. The switchboards lit up in the East. The show never made it to the West. I was called into the president's office.
They went down the panel and they got to me and I said, that's the way I started.
Oh, come get me, come get me, come get me.
Suggestiveness is often in the eyes of the beholder, as producer Larry Gelbart learned during a taping of his 1980 marital comedy, United States.
To get a laugh out of his wife, the husband, who was played by Beau Bridges, suddenly appears from out of the closet wearing one of her negligees. And at the moment that Beau Bridges stepped up to the bed, one of the straps slipped on the nightgown, revealing one of his pectorals.
Before mobs could burn down Burbank, an NBC censor leapt into action and demanded a retake.
He said, well, his strap fell. I said, yeah, did that make him a woman? You know, he said, no, of course he's not a woman, but in this context, it's very provocative.
Naked breasts of any kind provoked censors into puzzling decisions.
So we wanted to do a thing about breast cancer and eventually gave it to one of our characters.
In St. Elsewhere's episode about breast cancer, a nurse played a screening video from the American Cancer Society.
And I get a call from NBC. It said to me, nipple's too big. Can you get a woman with a smaller nipple? I said to him, you're kidding. It's like a joke now. You're kidding. And he said, no, we're not kidding. We have to have a smaller nipple. I said, this tape came from the American Cancer Society. It's their tape. I didn't shoot the tape.
A mammogram is simply an X-ray of the breast.
Said, we really, really want a smaller nipple. I said, you know what? When I hang up with you, I said, I am calling the American Cancer Society. I'm calling the National Institute of Health. I said, and I'm calling the New York Times, and I'm going to quote you. That you want a smaller nipple? They said, well, we'll call you back.
The censors called back and said the large nipple could stay on screen, but only for 2 seconds. Nipples are a hot button for censors, but over the last 25 years, no issue has galvanized censors and special interest groups as much as homosexuality. In 1977, Soap tried to scrub off the same-sex taboos by presenting the first regular gay character on a network series.
The homosexual community thought that we were making too much fun of it. The religious community thought we were proselytizing.
I don't think there's room on the medium of television for dirty jokes, for filth, for trash.
We were a equal opportunity offender.
In a baffling case of preemptive censorship, opponents demanded ABC take Soap off the air, even though it hadn't even hit the air.
The Southern Baptist Convention is asking stations, sponsors, and the network to keep it off the air.
ABC wasn't about to do that, and we didn't think it had to.
Still, 15 ABC stations have said no to Soap.
Despite the pullouts by affiliates, when ABC finally unwrapped Soap in September 1977, it was a smash with viewers, but not the moral majority.
These pressure groups, with their primarily phantom constituencies, killed the show.
Though Soap garnered high ratings its entire run, it never had enough advertiser support to be profitable for ABC.
So they couldn't kill us. They had to cancel us. We understood, and it pained us greatly.
Some shows fought back and pained the censors instead.
On Hill Street, we did a story about a guy who dies banging a sheep. He has a heart attack. Hill Street had just won all these Emmys. So now, you know, they were on the team. But they were saying, you know, a sheep. Can we, guys, I mean, do you really want to do that? Steven said, yeah, I really want to do that.
The show went on the air, but only after meeting a standards and practices demand.
Oh, Lordy. So the compromise was they made him put a bow on the sheep. Now, what difference does that make?
The difference was simple. With a female sheep, at least the bestial bond was a heterosexual one. NBC let Hill Street break a lot of ground, but drew the line at gay livestock.
Reporter, how do you know it's a sheep?
Tag here says Fifi. I assume it is a female.
Skittishness about gays even applied to consenting adults of the same species. On a 1989 episode of 30-something.
They came and wanted to show two men together in bed, and we said, well, you know, we're dealing with homosexuality, and I guess you can show the embracing, and you can show, but we'll draw the line at kissing.
So when did you know?
Always, I guess. I went through all this.
We were under the covers, but we were never allowed to touch. That was not possible at the time.
What?
You.
Just the sight of two men in bed together incited controversy. Advertisers, normally salivating to penetrate the market of 30-somethings young upscale viewers, abruptly pulled out.
I think we lost $1 million in advertising with just the fact of the two men being in bed together.
Advertisers often shy away from provocative material, but viewers don't. In February 1991, L.A. Law's ratings soared when it unveiled the first romantic kiss between two women on network television.
Friends of mine who were gay and who were lesbian said to me, "Oh, you don't understand. We all stayed home to watch that moment." And that's kind of great, you know, the power of television.
I thank you for helping me make my stand. I never could have pulled it off without your help.
Well, you have a big fan in me, Abby.
You have a big fan in me too, CJ.
Oh.
But NBC wasn't necessarily a big fan of lesbian characters.
What I heard was that the network sent them a memo that said you cannot have two regular characters on a series have any kind of same-sex relationship.
I'm sorry, I have to go home. I've got to go.
Okay.
It took 8 years, but the shock of seeing two women smooch on TV gradually wore off. Just as America's pulse was returning to normal, in 1999, ABC triggered palpitations again with a male-male kiss in Wasteland.
Wasteland. Let's see, what I was trying, it was a huge attempt to kill my career.
Wasteland brought soap opera actor Russell and sports writer Cliff out of the closet and into each other's arms.
And they loved each other, and they sort of their closetedness was what brought them together.
But the script, which united Russell and Cliff, divided creator Kevin Williamson and ABC.
ABC made us shoot the kiss 3 ways. When we had a peck, we had a handshake, we had a 3-second kiss, and then we let them go at it all, you know, tongue all out, one for one. So it affects the script, it affects the content, it affects the creative vision, so it's frustrating.
In the end, the short 1-second kiss made the cut. But ABC made a bigger cut, canceling the entire series after only 3 episodes. This kiss never aired on network TV. Over the last quarter century, gay groups fought back when television tried to censor them. But in 2001, it was gays themselves who became the censors.
It's not about free speech. This is about money and greed and hate. How dare you, Paramount, profit from prejudice? Shame on you, Paramount. Shame, 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 shame.
Across America, homosexual organizations protested Dr. Laura Schlesinger's new talk show because she once called homosexuality a biological error. The protests succeeded. Dr. Laura was banished to the graveyard shift in most television markets and soon was canceled.
I'm frightened by the situation that exists at the moment where major corporations are buckling to pressure to cut off controversial speech on television.
Freedom of speech is one thing, but when it promotes hate towards a group, and that's what Dr. Laura is doing, we'd like it stopped.
For all the progress television has made in the last half-century, free speech is still not free. TV's pushed envelopes, broken ground, and toppled taboos grabbed the spotlight, but viewers should always remember that TV's images and ideas have been filtered and sanitized.
Stand by, Walter.
For whether they come from networks, sponsors, or special interest groups, censors will always be behind the camera of television.